Now, it's been a busy couple of weeks for me, so I apologize for not getting this video out sooner, but in case you weren't aware, I am a huge fan and huge supporter of Aptera because I'm all about efficiency. That's why I bought the vehicle I'm in right now. It's the most energy efficient vehicle on the market currently, but I don't think it will have that lead for much longer, especially if Aptera is able to hit the market within the next year or so, because this company has a very clear, very obvious mission statement to just build and deliver the most energy efficient vehicles possible. And that's what I love so much about them. In fact, the vehicles are so efficient that solar actually starts to make sense on these vehicles, because theoretically you could get between 30 to 40 miles of range a day just by leaving this car parked in the sun, which I live in a pretty sunny climate. But the main reason I wanted to post another update video on Aptera is because at the Fully Charged show in San Diego, which unfortunately I was busy that weekend, I wasn't able to attend, but they showcased their next phase of vehicle development, which is Gamma. They already had Alpha and Beta. Gamma's after that, and lastly is Delta, which is basically the production model. So this is the last Aptera prototype design we will see, but still a lot of its design is more current, more up to date in regards to what we should expect the vehicle to actually look like. And I wanted to highlight a lot of the design changes they made because it is exactly proof as to why I love Aptera so much. Very little issues I have with the updated design, but ultimately they gave their headlights and blinkers a bit of a makeover. I think they kind of found a more uniform way of designing their headlights. To me, it just looks less busy. It's a lot more minimal, which again, I'm a fan of. So as long as these headlights and brake lights and blinkers and everything are still allowing them to find parts and find suppliers that are able to deliver on time and at pretty decent volume for their needs, I'm all in favor of it, because I will fall in love with designs if I understand the purpose behind them. I don't like fall in love with like random concept cars that cost, a fortune that never actually make it to market. But if I find out a product was designed with the intention of achieving something, whether that's a lower price or a faster production ramp or a better efficiency, that's what I get on board with. So they showcased this updated interior as well, which before we had only seen renders of, so it was cool to get some IRL photos of these things. But there was definitely a lot of controversy surrounding the center console because it looks kind of different. It looks very weird. I mean, you've got these like strings where the cup holders would be, and all of the fabric that the center console is covered in has this kind of weird, like, grainy texture to it. And I'll admit, when I first saw it, I thought it looked weird. I thought it looked a little bizarre. I don't know if I necessarily thought it looked bad, perchance, but it's definitely not what you're used to. Typically, we have cars trying to make things really smooth and not look too rough. We have the fake leather now, or the slight textured plastic, but we're used to things looking just so smooth and clean, and that center console definitely looked a little wrinkly and kind of raggedy. But as soon as I saw it, I immediately knew, like, well, I don't know why they chose that texture with the center console, but I'm sure Aptera has a reason to justify it, maybe because of its cost or because of how it ages, or the real answer ended up being way cooler than I originally expected. But they posted on Twitter that the center console is made of pineapple leather. It's a natural textile that they take from the leaf fibers of a pineapple, and they are saying that these would typically go to waste or just be thrown out. But Aptera found a supply chain that was likely just trying to get rid of something and turned it into a part of their vehicle. That way, of course, the cost of buying that material is likely very cheap and also sustainable because they don't have to use as many oils and plastics. So once I read that, I was like, yep, I'm all the way on board, because I'm sure, the first time you get in an Aptera, especially if you're taking someone else with you, they're going to be like, what the heck is up with this armrest? What's going on with the center console thing? And if you told them, well, they found a sustainable source to replace, all of the oils and plastics that we normally use for interior design and materials. And once I understood the reason behind this design choice, I fell in love with it. I was like, yeah, that makes me actually appreciate the look, and I'll be thinking about that more often I look at the car. I know I'm weird that way. Some people just want it to look a certain way, and it doesn't matter how weird it is. But I feel like Aptera is right on track to understand that if you're buying a vehicle like an Aptera, right? It's a two-seater, it's got 3 wheels, and it's very, very different from everyday vehicles. And most people are going to describe it as weird or dangerous, or it looks like an airplane or something. So if you're in a vehicle like this, you're all in favor of function over form. Or, in my opinion, the form factor is still really, really cool, but you're all about that efficiency, you're all about that sustainability, in which case, the type of person that's comfortable being inside, a person who's comfortable being inside a 3-wheeled vehicle like an Aptera is probably the same type of person that would love and appreciate a more sustainably sourced material choice on the inside. So, little detail there, but I love that design choice, and I can't wait to find out about more parts of the vehicle that they chose a sustainable and recyclable solution for. for. Obviously, the updated Yoke is also being showcased, but personally, I know very few people are probably going to agree with me on this. I'm a fan. I know it looks very, very minimal and very basic. You know, there's not a lot of buttons. There's just two little scroll wheels. But now that I've been driving for a few thousand miles this Tesla Model 3, I have fallen in love with the scroll wheel approach, because as long as you have a way to click back and forth on both of those scroll wheels, push them in, holding down one does one thing, holding down the other does another thing, and of course they scroll up and down, you can combine so many controls all at once into a very minimal, very clean looking design. And personally, it's one of my biggest pet peeves in modern day vehicles that companies love to stuff steering wheels with buttons all over the place, oftentimes ones that you're hardly ever going to use. So I'm all in favor of that clean, minimalistic steering wheel design, and I'm also a big fan of Yokes. I know they take some getting used to, but if you talk to really any everyday driver that got behind the yoke of a Model S or X, they'll usually tell you that it was a little bit weird at first, but they slowly got used to it over time. And usually most people's biggest complaints with the Model S and X yoke is not the yoke itself, it's the capacitive buttons. And that's what we don't see here on the Aptera yoke. It has two gear stalks in the back, so if you're the type of person that prefers having a physical blinker and having a physical gear stock to change directions and what have you, then the Aptera Gamma Edition appears to still be rocking those, which is cool. And as Aptera has wisely explained, this yoke design allows for better knee room, which when you're working with a very small vehicle like this, but you want to be accommodating for people of all different kinds of heights, not having this excess space and giving you better visibility of what's in front of you has a lot of advantages, even if it is weird. And like I said before, if you're the type of person to be comfortable with such a weird and different vehicle like the Aptera, the yoke will probably not be that big a stretch for you. Even though I know this is probably going directly against what a lot of people love in their cars. I can imagine some people watching this video and seeing the Aptera Gamma Edition and they're like, this is literally the freaking ugliest car I've ever seen. And I'm just like, you know what? Personal taste is personal taste. You can have your opinions, but once you understand the logic and motivation behind all of these decisions, I think it's very much justified by the company's mission statement. So there's only a couple things in this interior that I'm still a little bit not a fan of or not super excited for, but again, this is still prototype land, is for one, the interior display. Now, of course, this could change by the time it enters production, but we're getting closer and closer as each iteration is made. For one, the bezels seem kind of thick, especially the chin on the bottom, much larger than what we're typically used to seeing in our Model 3s and Ys. And, you know, compared to other non-Tesla EVs out there, this still is a very large, very easy to read display, but if you're going to be owning this thing for a very, very long time, which I think a lot of people are, Aptera's expressed how they care about modularity and right to repair because they want people to own these vehicles for long times, then I think that display is going to feel very dated and very antiquated fairly quickly. So trying to get a thinner bezel design that can hold up the test of time. The other thing that's partially worrying to me is it feels like there's not a great place to put your phone. I mean, within this pineapple leather center console, there's like a tiny sleeve that they say you can tuck your phone in when you're driving, but in that tiny sleeve, you can't see the display of your phone, and it doesn't seem like it would charge the phone either. So I think a lot of people are used to having wireless chargers in their vehicles now, so not having that in the Aptera will feel kind of like a miss, but probably many can justify it as like, well, for the sake of efficiency, we're not baking in that many ways to charge other devices when you're inside the car, because the battery pack the Aptera is working with is much smaller than most other EVs, so when you're sparing energy to charge excess devices, that's going to put a bigger dent in your energy consumption than it ordinarily would in a car like this with a 60 kilowatt hour battery pack, whereas at least the initial Apteras coming out of the factory are going to be like 40 kilowatt hour battery packs. So maybe that's their motivation for not really wanting to keep your phone on, or maybe they just trust that third parties will come up with mounts anyway, so why waste factory and manufacturing time on making your own phone mount if people are going to use their own, you know, MagSafe accessories that they hook onto the display in the future. I guess we'll see. But a few nice little additions that they showed on the outside of the design is, for one, this knock-knock approach. So you go up to the glow-go, as they call it, and I guess you knock on it and that automatically will spring the door open. I love the Aptera doors, by the way, because I've always been a fan of vertically opening doors. Basically anything that doesn't have to swing out as much as traditional car design goes. That's why I'm kind of a bigger fan of minivans than most people. I feel like they get a negative stigma. But anyway, the Aptera is able to open its doors straight upwards, which is really cool, kind of like a DeLorean. But on top of that, the fact that they have this kind of spring-loading arms so that once the door is unlocked, or I assume when you're controlling the car from the phone app, you'll probably be able to just open the door without even touching it or grabbing it. That's super cool and futuristic, and because it goes upward, you probably won't have to worry too much about it running driving into cars next to you, but still a fairly futuristic design and something that also just looks really, really cool. I've never seen a vehicle look so impressive with both of its doors open, other than maybe the Model X Falcon Wing doors. That's just kind of its iconic stance when they're open, but the Model X is like over $120,000. This vehicle is trying to be hopefully start under $30,000, which is even more impressive. So I like that knock-knock approach to the door, but I'd also just be comfortable with a way to tap it from a widget on the phone key. That would be nice too. And they also mentioned that while Tesla has removed ultrasonic sensors from their vehicles, Aptera has ultrasonic sensors built into the wheel covers, which help with aerodynamics, but a lot of people are concerned that the Aptera is a fairly wide vehicle, especially if you're measuring the wheels, because the normal cabin and chassis is actually pretty close to the size of a regular vehicle like this. But what's adding to the overall weight that has a lot of people concerned with parking and navigating the car in tight spaces is that those side wheels that stick out, while they help with aerodynamics, they do make the vehicle particularly wide. The Aptera, while it seems like a small vehicle, is actually wider than a Cybertruck, which is hard to wrap your brain around, but the fact that they have ultrasonic sensors on the outside of those wheel covers, I think makes it a lot easier to pull into tight spaces, and it'll make people feel like they're a lot more comfortable because they're going to have park assist. Unlike a lot of people, unfortunately, who have been taking delivery of Teslas recently who don't have ultrasonic sensors, which means no summon, no auto park, and no park assist, which are pretty crucial features, especially in expensive vehicles like this. So appreciate the ultrasonic sensors still being there, not falling back completely on vision quite yet. And I'm also happy to see that the Aptera Gamma Edition is road legal now, because it does have tiny and very aerodynamic side view mirrors, so much so that you can tell that Chris Anthony has said this in interviews and stuff. They don't want to have side view mirrors because they're terrible for aerodynamics, and they want to just have cameras that you can see from the displays on the inside of the car, but unfortunately they're not legally able to deliver the vehicle without side view mirrors at this point. So they came up with this really, really tiny, narrow design of mirror. I don't even know if those mirrors are legal, but you can just technically see a little bit of information from them, but it feels like one of those, okay, we have to do this, but ultimately there are still cameras on the vehicle, and I assume you will still be able to see what those cameras are seeing on the outside of the vehicle, so you still have good visibility, and you don't have too much aerodynamic drag from like big beefy beers sticking out on the side. So little detail that easily gets missed, but I appreciate that Aptera, of course, would be the company to figure out how to make the most aerodynamic side view mirror, and I think they've achieved that. I also love the redesigned approach they made with the license plate kind of sliding out from the side to expose the charge port door. That seems a lot more elegant than the tuck away approach that they had before. So once again, really appreciate that design choice. And if you're thinking to yourself, well, Drew, this is just a prototype, it's never going to come out, it's all vaporware, just keep in mind that Aptera has recently announced just a few weeks ago that the solar cells they intend on building for their vehicles have just entered production, and these cells had to be extremely heavily tested and found a way to stand the test of time. They had to be efficient, lightweight, and cheap, but at the same time be arcing so that they can match with the curvature of the vehicle and its extremely aerodynamic design. And I love how transparent Aptera has been with the community, saying what stage of development they're in, now saying that the solar cells are in production for their vehicles. And of course, awesome Sandy Monroe helped unveil the Gamma prototype at the Fully Charged show and talked a lot about how excited he is for this product and the future development of it, and the fact that Aptera chose Monroe and Associates to help bring this vehicle to market is wonderful. So while yes, it's not on the market yet, it's absolutely a real thing. They're ordering parts, they're beginning low volume production, and again, they're not trying to make this vehicle your last car. They know a two-seater is not going to replace your sedan or SUV. It's meant to be enough for people that just drive by themselves or with one other person, and trying to be the most cost-effective way to transport yourself, because it can charge from the sun, it can consume 100 watt-hours per mile, and that allows you to hopefully achieve insanely good range and require not that many kilowatts to achieve many miles added back into the battery pack very quickly, which means quick charging even from a 110 outlet while still having 25 cubic feet of storage space in the back. So I'm sure there's compromises with this design, of course. You're gonna have a lot harder time avoiding potholes with a three-wheeled vehicle, but ultimately I do think a lot of the compromises are going to be justified with all of the cost advantages of this vehicle and all of the sustainability that they're prioritizing with this design. So very excited, very happy with the current state of Gamma, and of course I'll keep you guys posted as there's more updates that become available. In case you weren't aware, Aptera is my most favorite EV startup at this point. There's no other company that I could see myself buying another EV in the future that's not from Tesla. Aptera right now is the closest thing I have to a second EV that I could see fitting into my lifestyle. You know, the Rivians are cool. I love Rivian. I just can't really justify it for my needs. I'm more about energy efficiency, and Rivian is more about, you know, adventures and off-roading and camping, which isn't really what my lifestyle entails. But because I live in such a sunny climate, I can't wait to imagine having a vehicle that can just charge itself. And frankly, if I get an Aptera in the future, I don't think I would need to plug it in. I think it would be completely self-powered, and I would just use the Model 3 for the times that I need more than 2 seats. Well, what do you guys think of the Aptera Gamma design? Feel free to let me know down in the comments below. And thank you to everyone on Patreon supporting this channel directly. Seriously, helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos. So thanks again. Have an excellent rest of your day.